Welcome to the Private Lenders Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the show. We do appreciate it. Quick announcement here before we get started. We just relaunched hardmoneymastermind.com. We consolidated a number of different websites related to private lending and the mastermind and everything else into one, so that you can find everything that the mastermind is up to in one place. You can log into your account, create a new account if you haven't done so already, check out live events coming up, apply for consulting, basically everything that the mastermind is doing, all at hardmoneymastermind.com. Really, really cool new launch for us. So let's talk about some extension fees. A bit of a background. So we all do, 12-month loans. Some people in the mastermind even do 6-month, 9-month loans. They're short-term financing, right? And sometimes borrowers need more time. And that's okay. Things happen. Permitting, right? Waiting for a refinance to close, waiting for a property to sell, and, waiting for the buyer's financing on that end. So there's a lot of reasons why extensions happen. And I think that we should be ready and prepared to handle them in the right way. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. There's a story you might have heard before. Back in the day, early years of HMB, where we had a good borrower. We were doing 6-month loans at the time. We had a good borrower. We had lent to him probably 5 times by then. And one time he needed more than the 6 months, which is not uncommon. And we made the mistake of defaulting him. We didn't do an extension for a small fee or even a free one. You can give freebies to good borrowers. We defaulted this particular guy and he got pissed and he never came back for another deal with us again. Part of the reason was it was early on. We didn't have total control of our capital investors in the way we needed to. Just a little backstory to get things started on why we need to be strategic about extensions.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to kind of have to make a business decision. Back then, we didn't really know what we were doing. So that was part of it. And we learned. That was a good learning lesson. And today that would never happen. And we're going to talk about how we structure some extension fees. I think that'll shed some light on this topic. But it also does depend on the capital structure that you have. Like, keep in mind, for institutional backed lenders out there, and I see it all the time, their loans become due, and whoever they sold the paper to, and then whoever they sold the paper to, and then whoever they leveraged the paper with, they might have capital calls. They might need capital back, so they might not be able to extend. And that puts a real estate investor in a really bad spot, right? It puts the investor in the bad spot, and it puts you as a lender in the bad spot if you don't control your capital. So when you're doing investor meetings and a capital investor asks the question of like, well, what happens if it's over the term? Because technically, if they're over the term, they're in material default, right? You could go through the foreclosure process. You could, in essence, jack them to a default interest rate, which in most, a lot of states that we lend into can be 18%, 24%. Obviously you should have all of that correct language in your note, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to go and be that extreme on a good borrower. But you want to make sure you talk to the capital investor as well to make sure that they understand that you're going to handle it whatever is appropriate. So, So a few typical things. So we already talked about that. The note, obviously, if a loan's over the term, that should be in default, no problem. But the business move is to have a conversation with the real estate investor to figure out what the deal is. Now, if the real estate investor stopped making payments or they ghosted you, like, you're not extending the loan. We don't extend loans for borrowers that aren't up to date on payments, or we don't extend loans for borrowers that have ghosted us and we don't know what's going on. This is for performing deals, not for not performing deals. So keep that in place. And we also don't have any drawn out extension language in our note, and we do that strategically. I know some folks do, some folks don't. But in our note, it says that we can charge, whatever state we're in, 18% or 24% default rate. So that's in essence an extra point per month if we chose to. We also have a 10% late fee on the remaining principal balance. So if we do a loan for $100,000, technically, if they're over the term, we could technically charge them another $10,000, 10%, if we wanted to. I'm just telling you what our note says of what we could do if we want, and we don't. We're going to do something that's kind of fair, win-win. So let's go through what happens in each individual instance. And I was talking to some private lenders about this because they've been in the game long enough now that they're starting to see these extensions, and they want to take care of their real estate investors, but at the same time, like, they don't want that money just be sitting out there forever and not making a return besides the monthly payment. So typically for a really good borrower, if they need an extra month, no problem. Free extension, typically don't charge anything. I think that's kind of a good look to do. Now, this is assuming that it's like, hey, I went over my permit process. We're doing 12-month loans, right? So most of these borrowers should be paying off by that, because we all know that if you're paying a 13% interest rate and it's a fix and flip and you need that money for, close to 12 months, like chances are you're not making any money on this deal, or or your numbers are very, very tight because you can't absorb, that amount. It makes it challenging. So what happens is, if it's like, yeah, I got killed on my permitting process. We had construction overruns. We had this. It's on the market. It's under contract. I just not be able to pay it off by March 1st. Can you give me, 2 more weeks and I'll get this done? No problem. That's easy, right? Like, I don't see any reason why you want to, charge additional fees for that. Typically, like, I would say the most standard one is the borrower needs a few extra months to get the thing done. The construction's almost done. They need a few extra months. So we kind of structure this a few different ways. What I like to do, and I think this is a very easy sell to a real estate investor, is tell them that in essence, they have to pay the points again. So if they want a 12-month extension, and this is assuming we're comfortable doing a 12-month extension, it's 3 more points. And if they want whatever, a 6-month extension, it's 1.5 points or 2 points or something related to that. And nobody ever complains about that because they know that they're paying points on the front end. That's customary. So, and they also know that it's a 1-year loan, and they know that a lot of lenders and hard money lenders make their money on the points. So nobody ever complains if you do it that way. Now, I know lenders, and there's times in some of our other offices where we'll charge more than that. So it'll be like, oh, I need a 3-month extension, or we're going to charge you 2 points. And if that's something that you can work out with the borrower and it works, great. But that's not always the case. So like for me, for my default for a good borrower is I try to make something fair, and it's usually some sort of pro rata setup based on, the origination points.
Yeah. So this negotiation is why we don't have the extension language in our note. I know some lenders do, and they tend to make it pretty expensive how they write it and then negotiate after that. You can definitely do that if you prefer. But again, we kind of have the other stuff in place. Like we could, if somebody's really giving us a hard time, we could charge the 10% of principal as a late fee, but we use that pretty rarely. So, okay, a few more of the mechanics of doing extensions. So everyone on our team, each of the loan originators, every month is looking at their portfolio and seeing what's coming due, right? See what's maturing. And actually, speaking of which, I have a few on my list to discuss with the team. So during this time, they'll be communicating with the borrower and saying, hey, what's going on with the property? Is it, almost done construction? Is it done? You just need time to sell? Or is it tenant occupied? Are you waiting to refinance? Whatever the situation might be, they'll have the conversation and see how much they need and offer a price. Okay, you need about 6 months on this. We're going to do 2 points or whatever it might be. And then there's a couple different ways to collect this. We like to get it paid right then. Oftentimes this doesn't happen. First of all, sometimes borrowers sometimes they try to avoid the conversation because they know that you're going to charge them a fee. So they try to not respond to your offer for extension. That happens on occasion. And oftentimes in that case, we'll just add the normal fee inside the mortgage office to that loan, and we'll have the conversation later then, right? If somebody's not responding to you, there's not much you can do. If they do, then you got some options. Like if you can get it paid up front, even with a discount, that could be a good thing. It'd be like, look, we could do a 6-month extension for 3 points, but if you pay it now, we'll discount it to 2. Cool. Some people go for that. A lot of people don't. If it doesn't come out of their pocket, it doesn't, they don't feel it that much, right? It's not an actual cash transaction. So if they don't want to do that and we're charging 3 points, we add it as a charge in TMO and we get it at the time of payoff. And that is totally fine too, right? Loans pay off every month that have extension fees on the back, and it serves as a, nice little bonus.
Yeah. I mean, obviously money now is better than money later. Even if it's less money now, it's better than money later. It's guaranteed. You have it in your pocket. You can do whatever you want, relend it out, do whatever. So that's the game plan. And, I wouldn't, but again, you got to make the best business decision for yourself in this situation. Again, your legal docs should map the most enforceable way to be able to collect. But most of the stuff that we do inside our office is very, business or, business kind of decision oriented, where Chris and I have a conversation and it's like, hey, this guy's going to need a few more months. Cool. No problem. Hey, we're going to charge him an extra point, and he's going to continue to make monthly payments. This guy's going to do this. And that works too. Because you do want to make it win-win. The goal of this business is not to do one-off borrowers and jack them to make as much money as you can on a per deal basis. It's to do repeat business. So that's why we found out, and I think the clients and borrowers appreciate that and understand as well, that you do something on like a pro rata basis on the points that they're used to paying anyways. And it's cheaper than doing a full refinance. And listen, sometimes we do full refinances because we're in a really good position and the borrower comes back to us and says, hey, I need more capital. And, sometimes it doesn't work. We can't put any more money into it. Sometimes it does work. And we'll say, cool, well, we're going to have to do a formal refinance. And, what happens when you do a formal refinance. There's additional costs besides lender fees that come in play. So that's not ideal unless you have to.
All right, real quick, let's talk about the investor side of things too, because that's a factor in the extensions as well. So like we started with that story about how we defaulted somebody when we shouldn't have because we went over the maturity date. Here's the right way to set expectations. First of all, it's your decision, your business decision, whether or not you want to split extension fees with the capital investors. You can do that if you want. It just so happens that we don't. We keep those just like we do origination points. And here's the messaging to the capital investors about that. Is if we have a performing loan, we want to keep it performing. They're making payments on time. They need some more time. Everyone, look, we have money on the sideline. People are always, bugging me to deploy more money for them. And sometimes it's hard, right? Sometimes the capital starts outpacing the loan production. And that's a good problem to have. But anyway, the messaging being that, hey, look, we're going to charge fees. And for capital investor, you're going to continue to get monthly payments, which is what you want. You're going to keep money deployed. You're getting your 10%. Everybody's happy. That's how we handle it. But if you want, you could also split some of it. Doesn't have to be 50-50, whatever split you decide with the capital investor. That's totally common in the industry as well. But something I wanted to mention too. Anything else on extensions, or is that the pod for today?
No, I think, I think that makes sense. I think this is a common thing that comes out and that comes up. And as you continue to be in this business, this is going to come up regularly. And, I think we're also at a place in the market right now that we're softening a little bit, and properties might not be able to sell for as much as the real estate investor wanted it to sell for. So they might be trying to hold out and wait a little bit longer, and they got to determine if it makes sense. So just use common sense, be smart about it, but you should, you deserve to get some sort of extension fee on deals that go over the term. It's just that simple, right? And especially if you're in the raising capital mode and you want that capital to, in essence, come back so you can relend it out and make the fees again. There's no reason why not to charge for an extension fee, something reasonable, something that's a win-win for both sides.
All right, everyone, that is the pod for today. Remember to go check out the new and improved hardmoneymastermind.com, and we'll see you here next time on the podcast.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not intended for legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.